Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Pranzata Podcast. This is your host, Andrea Pranzatelli. This is episode number 108 on the Pranzata Podcast on YouTube. Before we get into it, if you are new to this channel, this is a podcast where I typically interview musicians, comedians, and other artists and entrepreneurs from the New York, Philadelphia, and New Jersey area. I also interview international guests on Zoom, and I do solo podcasts like I am doing today. If you are new to this channel and you like what you hear today, please don't forget to hit subscribe and comment on anything I talk about throughout the episode. It is my mission to grow this channel this year, and your support would be incredibly helpful. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm doing a solo episode today because it has been crazy in Philadelphia this week with the weather getting cold and everything like that. So that threw me off a little bit with my schedule. I had to take care of some things, and the cold weather just kind of made it difficult to get around. So I didn't want an in-person guest today, so I'm going to do solo today. But I'm actually really excited to do a solo episode today because I feel like there's a lot of things I want to update my listeners on about living in the city. I did a Q&A a few weeks ago where a lot of the questions from my listeners were like, tell me what it's like living in Philadelphia. I want to hear your experience. And at that point, I was so new to living in Philadelphia that I really didn't have much to say. I had only been living there for 2 weeks. So my response at the time was, honestly, I have no idea. I've only been here for like 2-3 weeks. So I don't really have much input to say. I was more like in the mindset of setting up my apartment, figuring things out, like changing my mailing address, that sort of thing. So I didn't have much experience. Now I've been living here for roughly 2 months, so I feel like I have a lot more experience and a lot to share. So I'm going to try to keep today's episode on the shorter side, but however, sometimes I say that and I tend to ramble longer than I thought I would. So first topic of today. Today is not a Q&A. I do like to do Q&As, but today I just kind of wanted to fill everybody in on what I'm doing. If you do want to do a Q&A, drop your comments. Drop your questions below what you would want me to answer for the next episode. But anyways, topic number 1 of the day, my stolen car. So a lot of my friends have been asking me about an update on my stolen car. So I wanted to talk about the full story here on my YouTube podcast and fill everybody in with what happened, what's the story about what happened, where I'm at now with the whole situation. Also, I also wanted to talk about it on my podcast because I think this would be incredibly informative for people who don't live in a city, because I feel like my stolen car could have been prevented had I known about this information in advance. I had never known about this information before, and apparently in Philadelphia, this is just common knowledge. So I feel like this information needs to be out there if it isn't already out there for some people. So first of all, my car was a Kia. It was a Kia Soul 2019. It was stolen on Christmas Day. I didn't find out till the next day because it happened in the middle of the night. But regardless, it happened right on the holidays on Christmas. It was crazy. So just to explain why it's common knowledge around here in Philadelphia that if you own a Kia or a Hyundai, by the way, a lot of people don't know that as well. If you own a Kia or a Hyundai, because they're actually partners. I never knew that. Kia and Hyundai are the same creators. So I don't know exactly what year. You might want to do further research and have a field day looking up videos after this episode is over. But maybe roughly 4 years ago, 2 years ago, something like that, there had been this viral TikTok challenge that kids were doing where they were, oh my God, I just spilled my tea, but I'll deal with that later. There had been this viral TikTok challenge where kids were teaching other kids how to steal Kias and Hyundais with a cell phone charger. Now, I don't know the exact mechanics or the science to how this works, but basically they hacked into something where there was some malfunction in the design of these Kias and Hyundais. And by the way, I don't think it's all Kias and Hyundais. I'm pretty sure it's certain ones within a certain time frame. So again, you might want to do your research after this to figure out if you do have a Kia or if you do have a Hyundai, if your car is at risk, because there's some that aren't. But anyways, my car happened to be one of the lucky ones who were at risk of this. And I had only been living here for 3 weeks, and this happened so quickly into living here. When I told my friends from New Jersey, they were like, that's crazy. I can't believe it. That's wild. Are you okay? Like, they were like imagining themselves in that situation, and they were like scared for me. Like, they were asking me if I was okay and stuff like that. The people who lived in Philadelphia, they were like, oh yeah, was it a Kia? This is, like, of course that's going to happen to you. Like I said, this is just common knowledge here. Also, just to walk you through the story of how I even found out my car was stolen, it's just so simple and stupid. I parked my car in front of my apartment right on my street. So it's street parking here. I don't have, it's Philadelphia. It's city street parking. There's no parking garage or anything like that around here. The street where I live on, you don't have to pay to park. So it's not a situation where you're likely to get towed or anything like that. I remember the night before I went to bed on Christmas, I had gone out for something, and then I came back inside, and I remember when I parked my car before coming back inside, I actually specifically remember going out of my way to make sure I had like a beautiful parking job. Like, I wanted, for some reason, I was like, you know what? I really want my car close to the curb today and not like sticking out in the road, because sometimes I could get lazy with that. And I was like, man, I don't want to get a ticket or something for that type of parking. So I specifically that night went out of my way to like have a beautiful, perfect parking job. Then the next morning I got up, I needed to run an errand, and I had slept in that day, and I remember getting out of the house by like 11 a.m. And I looked around, and remember, I parked my car right in front of my house, and it was gone. It was just missing. And there was a fleeting thought in my head, like, did I get towed? But I pretty much intuitively knew that the car was stolen, because I just knew, like, I knew it was a possibility, but I was like, wait a second, this is free parking here. There's no parking signs like park from 9 to 30. I mean, this is free parking. I had a perfect parking job. I don't see any reason why my car would have been towed. So I kind of intuitively knew it was stolen. So I called the police, the local police in my section of Philadelphia, just to check, like just to double check if for some reason it had been towed, if they knew any information about that. And when I called the police station, the first thing they said to me was, ma'am, before you proceed forward with your story, is it a Kia? And I was like, yes. And I was like, maybe they did find it, but no. They were like, if it's a Kia, like 99% sure it was probably stolen, but we're going to come to your house to do the police report and check for evidence and whatnot. So I was like, what? Like, again, at this point, I never heard about the Kias and Hyundais being stolen. So the cops came over. They did the police report. I was pretty upset. Like, I wasn't like besides myself. But I was just kind of in shock and confused, because I'm like looking around my street. I'm like, there's a Mercedes right there. Why would they want my Kia? And I'm so responsible with like locking my door. So I didn't get it. And not only that, but I'm a very light sleeper, and my car had been parked so close to my house that night. So I hear everything in the middle of the night. It's so easy to wake me up in the middle of the night. So the fact that like I didn't hear anything, it was so bizarre. So the cops, they looked where they asked to show me where I parked my car. I showed them, and I didn't even notice this. They were the ones who pointed it out to me. I guess because the windows on a Kia are slightly tinted, but there was just broken glass that was kind of black all over where I had parked. And he's like, yeah, they stole it. Like, here's the glass. You can see it everywhere. This is like common evidence for this sort of thing. So, they called the towing lot in the area just in case that my car was towed for whatever reason. And they said if my car had been towed, they would have known immediately. It wouldn't be something they'd wait for. They confirmed my car wasn't there. So the cops confirmed, yes, your car was indeed stolen. At first, I was pretty devastated, because just to explain, I had been in some financial struggles at that point, because just to explain what I do for work, I'm a piano teacher. So money fluctuates. There's some months where I make really good income, and there's some months where I don't make a lot of income. And that's usually the holidays and the summer, because I teach a lot of young kids, and my schedule often revolves around the school year's schedule. So for example, in the summers, my business is extremely slow because a lot of kids go on vacation, sometimes for months at a time, that sort of thing. And then around Christmas or Easter, like that type of stuff, Christmas especially, December is very slow for private music teachers because there's just so many activities, like family things, traveling. So business is like, I make half the amount of income. So during those months where I was making far less income because of my students going on vacation or the holidays and whatnot, I had relied heavily on my car to do part-time gigs with Uber and DoorDash and that sort of thing. That had sort of been my solution to fill in the gaps for those months in which I wasn't getting as much business. So keep in mind, I had just moved into this apartment. So it costs a lot of money to move into an apartment. Like you got to pay for renting the truck. There's so many things you have to set up the cable and whatnot. There's so many things you have to do. So I already was tight. On top of that, my students were mostly gone for the month. And so my only source of income that month was supposed to be DoorDashing and Uber. Thank God it was only 2 weeks left of the month in which I had to make that income, but I really needed it. So when my car was stolen, I was devastated because I was like, I have 2 weeks left of this month. How am I going to make my money? You know what I mean? Well, I guess actually less than 2 weeks, right? Because it was Christmas, but still, like the students taking off for the holiday kind of goes into the first week of January as well. So pretty much 2 weeks. I was like, how am I going to live? Like, how am I going to eat? What am I going to do? I was freaking out at first. So I had just like shout out to any of my listeners who had contributed to this or any of my friends who had contributed to this. I put out a GoFundMe for $500. Like I wanted to keep it honest, like, because I was like, all right, this is just 2 weeks. I don't want to like get more than I really need for the 2 weeks before my students come back, but I'm desperate. I need help. You know what I mean? And shout out to my friends and my family, whoever helped me out on this. I only asked for 500 and some people donated more than I had asked for. And that was actually like a really like warming experience for me to see how much support I had in that situation, because some people had reached out like from years back, like old roommates, old friends, people who were like, I thought were just acquaintances, but had, cared about me more than I thought. Like just, it was really warming to see. This is getting off topic a little bit. I want to stick to the story about my car being stolen, but I do want to say this and get this out there. I feel like the last few years I had been telling this story in my head, like I'm alone, I don't have anybody, I don't have help. But this kind of like changed my perspective. I was like, oh wait, I do have community, I do have help. I just, maybe I'm not always looking for it, or I'm not always asking for help. Like for me to put out a GoFundMe, that was really hard for me. I don't often ask for help. You know what I mean? Like asking for help is really difficult for me. So it kind of forced me to realize I do have a sense of community. It's just that I have to ask for it when I need the help. So that was really inspiring and warming. But anyways, to get to the next part, where I'm at now with the situation, because a lot of people who helped contributed to that fund are like, what ended up happening? Did you ever get a car back? What's going on with the situation? So it turns out that my car has never been found. The police did tell me that they often find these cars really quickly because most of the time it's kids who steal these cars because of the Kia TikTok challenge. Like 14-year-old, 15-year-old kids are the ones who steal these cars. So because of that, they're not going to keep them. So most of the time they're able to, a lot of the times the kids will kind of joyride these cars and then just abandon them somewhere. They never found the car. So there's no guarantee or proof or evidence that it was a kid who stole the car. That's just the most likely situation. But if it is common knowledge for years now that Kias and Hyundais are being stolen, it's also entirely possible that an adult like person in a financially desperate situation stole the car and went to a chop shop. And it's probably what happened. If they haven't found the car yet, would be my best guess at this point, because if it was a kid, it would probably be found by now. But anyways, where I'm at now with the situation too, with the insurance and everything, because it wasn't found, I have Geico. Geico declared it as a total loss. I had been paying a loan off to finance this vehicle. Back when I bought the vehicle in, I think 2021, something like that, I had bought it not brand new, but with very low mileage in it. I think there was maybe like 10 or 20,000 miles on it. It was practically brand new. It was just slightly used. And I had been paying a monthly payment plan to pay off the car. At this point, I probably had 50% of the car paid off, and I had another 50% to go, which was roughly 12,000, I want to say. The insurance, the deal was they were going to give me the value of the car. That's how much they were going to give me, which ended up being pretty much exactly what the loan was. At this point, the value of my car was, I think it was maybe slightly more. So I got a check back of like a small balance of like maybe $200, $300, something like that. But that's what ended up happening. The car insurance just paid off the loan in total, gave me a little bit of cash, like check for what was left over for the value of my vehicle. And now I'm just back to square one where I don't have any car. I do have to say, when this originally happened, I felt like I was devastated because I was like, what am I going to do? I'm a musician. What am I going to do? Like, what the you know? And by the way, to explain, I'm a musician. I have to carry around a keyboard to gigs and whatnot. So how am I going to survive this type of field without a car? One of my good friends that I really look up to right now, that's been helping me out with a lot of different things. She's very positive and motivational person. She had told me, I know this seems crazy now, but in 1 to 2 months, I can almost guarantee you this is going to be a blessing in disguise. In some way, you just might not see it now. So now that some time has gone by, she's absolutely correct. This has been a major blessing. By the way, not that I'm condoning stealing a vehicle. I'm not saying you should steal a vehicle, but it just kind of worked out that my vehicle being stolen was good for me. And I'll explain why in a second. A lot of my listeners know I've been trying to correct some financial mistakes that I had made over the years. I've been paying off old debts and whatnot. Keep in mind, this car was costing me probably in total $600 to easily to $700 a month for the following reasons. For one, I had to pay the monthly payment plans to finance the vehicle. 2, I had insurance on the vehicle, which was expensive. And then 3, the gas. So everything really adds up. And I want to say my car monthly could easily cost me between $550 to $700 in that range, depending on the month with the gas and whatnot, but at least $550 a month. So after all was said and done, and I realized that my loan was completely paid off, I'm like, wait a second. I live in a city now. There's trains everywhere. There's trains a couple blocks away from my house, or my apartment. It's a row house. I don't know. Like, I guess you could say a townhouse, whatever. There's trains everywhere. There's grocery stores within walking distance. I work from home most of the days. Also, with the musician aspect of things, I have some bandmates that, again, it's like coming from a person who feels like guilty or scared to ask for help. When they found out about my situation, they're like, we'll drive you to every single gig. We don't care. And I was like, wow. So this is a major blessing in disguise, because I just remember prior to this incident, literally praying to God, like, I've been struggling enough with my financial situation for years and years and years. Please help me, So I'm not saying God would encourage someone to steal a car, but my car loan just got completely paid off because of this. And that's amazing to me. I'm going to be able to save so much money because, like I said, now that I think about it, I'm going to be able to get around by train really easily. It's very cheap to get around by train. And on those rare occasions where I do need to take a car for a long distance trip, or if I do need to take the train, but it's like horrible weather, I can grab an Uber here and there, and I can rent a vehicle for those long-term trips. And even that, over the span of a year, is going to save me so much money. So I'm not saying I'll never get a car again. I would like to get a car again because it would make life easier in many ways, but I'm going to take a big break from a car because I think in the meantime, while I'm saving this $600 a month, it's really going to help my financial situation. And I could invest that money into so many different things right now that are smarter for me. Because also in hindsight, in the past, I had made some pretty bad financial situations. And I think at the time that I had financed my Kia, I had a pretty bad credit score. And a lot of financial companies will take advantage of people in those situations. They will know you're desperate, so they will hook you up with a situation that's not really a good deal. So I think I got locked into a situation that wasn't a great deal for me. I was paying way more than I had to. They charge more interest to people in situations like that. So paying for the vehicle over the larger span of time, it was just not a good situation, and I was locked into it until it was paid off. So like I said, this was major blessing in disguise. Not only that, but there's another part of this that was really nice. I noticed within just a week of not having a car and being forced to walk around the city to run my errands, at first, like when I tell that to people, they're like, oh man, that sounds miserable. And people feel bad for me. But I actually started feeling mentally so much better because I wasn't in my car. I was out being physically active every single day, which is something that I hadn't experienced in a long time because I'm a piano teacher now. I used to be a waitress a long time ago. And I remember then I was so active all the time. Granted, I do work out, like I go to the gym, but when you think about it, that's 1 hour of the day. So I'm physically active 1 hour of the day. And then all the other parts of the day, I'm just sitting on my, for lack of a better term, teaching piano lessons virtually. And then I drive in my car. So what am I actually doing to get physical activity outside the 1 hour a day at the gym? And I don't even go every day, like 3 or 4 days a week I go to the gym. So having my car stolen literally forced me to live an active lifestyle where I had no choice but to walk around and get places. And almost instantly, like literally within a few days, I noticed a major improvement in my mood and soreness in my body because sitting around all day doesn't feel good. So I started noticing an improvement with just like how I felt overall. I felt so much happier. So not condoning stealing cars. Shout out to one of my friends. A lot of people like they think I'm lying when I say I'm happy I got my car stolen. They're like, she's just saying that to make the situation not as bad as it is. But no, I genuinely do mean this. And one of my friends, he gets it. He hates having a car. And he reached out to me and he was like, I'm so jealous of you. I'm like, that's the craziest thing. I never thought I would have somebody like tell me they're jealous that my car got stolen. And he was like joking around. He's like, you need to pay it forward and steal somebody else's car so you can help their life as well. So he's like one of the only people that actually get it because he hates cars, he hates driving, and he has a car, and I mean, I don't know why he doesn't just sell it, but I think he needs it. I think he's a musician as well, so I think he probably just needs the car. But anyways, that's the story of my car. I really think people need to know about this if you don't live in a city. If you have a if you have a Hyundai or a Kia within this certain span of years, you need to look up this information on your own. I'm sorry, I didn't research in advance, but you need to check if your car is at risk of being stolen. And if your car is one of those at risk of being stolen, what you need to do, which the police actually told me that this is a very effective method, is you need to get a steering wheel lock. It's like this long tool that you can place over your steering wheel. I'm not saying you need to use this steering wheel lock if you live in the suburbs, but let's just say you happen to bring your car into Philadelphia, into New York City, into Trenton, New Jersey. If there's just certain, you might have a situation where you need to bring your car into a place like that. I don't recommend you bring your car to a city if you have a Kia or Hyundai, but if you do, or if you live in the suburbs right outside of the city, because sometimes you'll get people from the city like going out into the suburbs, please do yourself a favor and buy yourself a steering wheel lock. It's like a long skinny tool that you can place over your steering wheel. The cop said it's like 98% effective. They can't steal your car if you have that. They will possibly attempt to steal your car, so it's not going to guarantee that you're not going to get your windows broken into. But at the very least, you can prevent the car from being stolen, unless you want your car stolen like I do, like I did. But anyways, that's the story of my stolen vehicle and where I'm at now with it, just to answer any of the questions from my friends and listeners who wanted to know about that, or just if you happen to have a Kia or a Hyundai and wanted to know information about that as well. Okay, next topic. This kind of transitions me into life in the city. Again, some of my friends had asked me about this and I didn't really have much answers because it had been too soon. So now I want to fill everybody in on what it's like to live in Philadelphia. First of all, it is definitely a wake-up call about being vigilant. After my car got stolen, that kind of woke me up about, wow, living in Philadelphia. And I'm not sure if I'm sure this can translate to most cities, but I think Philadelphia is one in particular where you do have to be a little bit more vigilant than living in the suburbs. Because the way Philadelphia is designed is that there are one of my friends was explaining to me that every city has its bad areas. New York City has its bad areas. LA, Hollywood even has its bad areas. It's got Skid Row and everything like that. But Philadelphia in particular, because I feel like it's somewhat of a smaller city. It's not really small, but compared to New York City, it's definitely a small city. And the layout of it is that you can have, you just really need to know where you're going, because you can have 4 blocks of a gorgeous area and then right next to that, one of the worst areas. And it's really common throughout the city where it's like, here's 4 amazing streets, that's a bad street, stay away from that. I happen to live in an area like that where it's called Fishtown, Philadelphia. I mean, I don't want to give out my address, but I don't mind like sharing the area where I live. I live in what's called Fishtown, Philadelphia, which is a very trendy area. A lot of music here, a lot of the arts, a lot of like cute coffee shops, that type of stuff. But it also on the map happens to be incredibly close to Kensington, which is not only one of the worst areas of Philadelphia, but it's one of the worst areas in the country. So it's just pretty fascinating. Just that juxtaposition of trendy, like hipstery juices and smoothies over here, and then just a couple blocks away, one of the craziest things you'll ever see in your entire life. So that's been one of the first things about living in Philadelphia, is that you do need to be smarter. You need to be more vigilant. You need to know things about how to avoid getting your car stolen. You, as a female, it's smart to carry mace with you, that sort of thing. I'm not trying to scare anybody either. I haven't been attacked or anything like that, but I've just been talking to different people and trying to get different people's perspectives. And it's a different thing. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know where you're going. You have to know which areas to avoid. So that's the first thing I would say about living in Philadelphia. With that being said, though, I love it here. I really, really do love it here. There's, like I said, without the car, I've been forced to walk around. And Fishtown, it feels like there's an enormous amount of opportunity with just within a few blocks. Like you can just walk a few blocks away and you'll find different venues that will host live music. You'll find different like coffee shops, different things like that, really cool thrift stores, like that type of stuff. So it's been incredibly inspiring to be living in a city and to be able to enjoy that type of lifestyle. I've only been living here for 2 months at this point, and I've already gotten to network and get gigs for my band and that type of stuff. So that's exactly the reason I moved here, was because I wanted more opportunities for my career, and they're here. So that's what I'll say. If you're somebody who does work in the arts, whether you're a musician or whatever, comedian, stand-up comedy, this is the place to be. I mean, literally just the other day, I saw one of my friends post on his Instagram that he was doing a comedy show. And this was a ticketed event, by the way. It wasn't like a free event, a comedy show in an apartment. And you had to purchase tickets, and there was like a whole really good lineup to be there. And I was like, what the hell? Why not? I'll check it out. And it was so cool. I mean, they had a live pianist in, like, when I walked in, and I thought it was my imagination, because I'm a piano player. So I'm like, that sounds like a real person playing piano. Maybe that's just like something on YouTube. But no, I walked in and they had a live piano player. That's what I mean by just the opportunities here. It's just like, you're going to see amazing things here that you wouldn't see in the suburbs. So in my opinion, that juxtaposition of like potential danger but opportunity for me has been worth it so far. What else could I say about living in Philadelphia? Definitely more down to earth compared to New York City. New York City is one of the best cities in the world. Don't get me wrong. It's beautiful. I mean, world of opportunities. But there's just something about Philadelphia that's more authentic in my opinion. Sometimes New York City can have like a ritzy vibe to it, like a business suit like type of vibe. And I feel like Philadelphia, the people are very down to earth here. The people, they're very community oriented over here. It really, while it is a city, it doesn't have that like big city, ritzy, fancy Wall Street energy. It has more of like a down to earth community type energy around here. So that's something I've noticed so far that I really like about Philadelphia. Definitely it isn't the city for everybody. I've talked to different people and I've heard all different reviews. I've heard some people say like, I hate Philadelphia. The streets are, I should mention that some people get like annoyed by the narrowing of the streets. Like there's not narrowing. I phrased that wrong. There's very narrow one-way streets. It's common to have one-way streets in a city that's a really popular city layout that you have to like, New York City has that as well. But the difference between Philly and New York City is New York City has really wide one-way streets. So like, for example, in Philadelphia, if there's a truck, if there's like a moving truck and they happen to be moving on a narrow one-way street, which most of the streets are, well, that street is blocked for the day. You know what I mean? So stuff like that. So some people, they hate that and they're frustrated by that. So for them, they wouldn't like living in Philadelphia. But for me, it was never an issue for me. I never felt stressed driving on the narrow streets. And now that I don't have a car, it's actually better because then it's easier to like walk around without getting hit by a car because the streets are so narrow, you can see everything going on, you know? I don't know. That's really all I have to say so far. I'm going to have to fill you guys in more. But again, if you like everything I said about Philadelphia and you're okay with being comfortable with the potential of danger and whatnot, I recommend coming here. One thing I will say about the danger aspect of things, if you do live in Philadelphia and you are afraid of being robbed or that sort of thing, because again, those things, I'm not saying that like you're here, you're gonna get robbed. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying it's definitely something to consider. So something I've noticed about all the houses around here is that they all have security systems. Something, again, that I never saw so much in the suburbs, which later I found out is common in the suburbs in the very wealthy areas. Because I think in the very, very, very wealthy suburbs, it's common for houses to get robbed because the people from the city will intentionally travel out to like mansions, like those types of suburbs, and break into their homes and steal valuable goods. Like that's really common there, to happen there. But because when I was living in the suburbs, I lived in just a regular house, so it wasn't really common, I feel like, in my area to have security systems. But here, even in smaller houses and smaller apartments, almost every house I walk in has a security system. So if you're going to live in here, I actually just got one. It's called Vivint. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but I'm pretty sure it's Vivint. And it's so cool. I have security cameras in the back of my house, in the front of my house, and there's so many different options, like levels of security you can adjust on your own. When I first got it, it was automatically set to this like really intense thing that everybody who walked by, it would automatically say camera recording and like scare the crap out of them. I thought that was a little too intense because I would like scare the mailman with it. So I was like, all right, I don't need this all the time. Maybe like if I go on vacation or like at night, I can put it on that high level of security. But like they call it deter tones, like deter people away from your house. You can put more gentle, friendly tones on there, not like that intense. So right now I have like a more friendly tone that's not that intimidating, but it's enough to let people know you're being watched, you're being recorded. And another cool thing is you get the information coming to your cell phone. So you can actually see on your cell phone, like I can be in another state and I can look at my cell phone and see my security cameras everywhere I go. So highly recommend it. Even if you live in the suburbs and you live in a more wealthy area, I highly recommend this company. It's so cool. It's either Vivint or Vivint. I can't remember exactly which one, but if you Google it, you'll be able to find it easily. Highly recommended. I feel so much more secure living here with all this like really cool technology at my fingertips. Okay, transitioning to the next subject, Jiu Jitsu. So going back to when I said you just feel a little bit different living in a city. You're aware that there could be danger. You're aware that you have to be more vigilant where you go. So after getting my car stolen, it kind of woke me up to the reality that I never in my life took any kind of martial arts. I've never had any training in how to defend myself. And as a woman walking around in a city, it's probably smart that I do know how to defend myself. So I was able to find a local Jiu Jitsu place, and I just want to talk about my first experience there. And if anybody else is considering Jiu Jitsu, first of all, the reason I chose Jiu Jitsu was because I had done some research online, and I was like, what is the best method of women for self-defense? And Jiu Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu especially, came up as a great option for self-defense for women, because it's a type of martial art. And I'm sure in a way they're all similar this way, but this one, there was just a lot of articles pointing specifically to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu as it being a martial arts where it's less about body mass and more about your skills. It's more about your intellect and how to problem solve and use your skills. So it's a great option for women to defend themselves, because women naturally are going to be weaker than men, and women are naturally going to be smaller than men. I mean, there's obviously some cases where it's not, but for the most part, I would say the majority of women are weaker physically than men and much smaller than men, like bone structure, height, whatnot. Because of that, it's an amazing option for women to learn self-defense techniques, because you can be in a dangerous situation and you can use your brain and your skills to get out of the situation and not your physical strength. So that's why I decided to join it. It was an amazing experience. I've only done one class so far, but it was a free trial class. And after doing the trial class, I'm going to join the first week of February and have it be a regular practice for me. A couple of things I noticed about the first trial class in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and remember, it's only one class, so I can't speak a lot, but I was able to take in and learn a lot just within that one class. First thing was, one thing I noticed is that they were giving discounts to women, because apparently a lot of women are afraid to join this sport because it's very male dominated. So a lot of the women feel left out in the classes. So the first thing I appreciated about this school in particular is that they were giving out 30% discounts for the monthly membership for women, which I think is incredible. He was basically explaining he wants to break the male dominated stereotype of this sport, and he wants more women to be involved in the community. So that was already a plus for me. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to save money doing this. Not save money, but save money going to this school compared to others. Unless this is a common thing that they give discounts to women. I don't know. The second thing I wanted to say was, I already saw within the first class how beneficial this really of a sport, martial arts and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is, because for one, there was an energy in the classes where there was competition but support all at the same time. So you can tell this wasn't just like people beating the crap out of each other to try to dominate. They were helping each other. I don't even know how to explain it, but if you've done the sport, you know exactly what I mean. There was a really strong feeling of camaraderie there. They have a practice where they force you to like give everybody a high five before you start the class and after you start the class. And I guess that's standard practice to remember that you're there to help and love and support each other. That's just a general part of the practice. So I noticed, while yes, this is a sport where people are physically fighting and wrestling each other, that they're not doing it from a place of trying to dominate and conquer. They're doing it of a place to try to learn, and they're there to help each other learn. So that was the first thing I noticed, was just the love and support. Secondly, another thing I noticed why this is such a great sport is because, like I said, it really forces you to get into your problem solving mentality, because this isn't a brute, blunt, sport that you're dominating with your physical energy. It's more a sport of skill and knowing how to get out of certain situations and being able to use that quickly. In a way, it's similar to chess. I guess the main difference between this and chess, though, would be that with chess, you have a long time to think about a move. In this case, you need to train, and then in the moment where you're actually in a physical altercation, you need to be able to think really quickly. So I guess that would be the main difference. But either way, it's similar to chess, that you're in a situation and you have to get out of it, and you have to use logic to think about which would be the smartest move to make. So it's really cool in that way, that for me especially, I think it's going to open my mind in ways that I really need right now, because I wouldn't call myself the most logical thinker. I think in the past I've been more of an emotional thinker, an intuitive thinker, which isn't bad either. I think it's great to be emotional, intuitive, like despite what people say, but I haven't really I don't think logic for me is my strongest suit. It doesn't come to me as naturally. So it is a part of me that I want to exercise. So I think this is going to be a brilliant way for me to exercise it, because I'm forcing myself to think about problem solving. And I think that's, it's a skill I need to develop. I would say those are the two main things I noticed. I would also say that it's a great workout in general. I felt the instructor was even explaining to me, but I felt it as he was explaining it to me, was that you have to move your body in different ways that you wouldn't normally move in a typical sport like weightlifting and whatnot. So you actually end up building strength and strengthening muscles that you didn't even think about, like certain muscles like really deep in there you end up strengthening. The last thing I will comment about what I've noticed about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that the people in the class are so humble, so chill, very health oriented. I noticed that everybody in the class seemed to be very fit, and I think to do something like this you do need to be fit, because you need to be agile. I actually think to a degree having a smaller body is probably a benefit in a sport like this, because you can move with more agility. So everybody was fit, but it wasn't like bulked out type of intense muscle body types. It was more lean but muscular body types. So that was really inspiring to be in a room of people who obviously really care about their health. I mean, I was talking to some of the people in the class, and they were talking about their diets and how they tried certain diets out to help their sport and everything like that. So to me, that was incredibly inspiring. So it's a great opportunity to meet health-minded people, because I myself am obsessed with health, and I'm always thinking about health. And sometimes people think I'm crazy, but I feel like in an athletic environment, all the people are going to be in a similar mindset. So that was really inspiring for me to be around so many healthy people. And again, so many chill people. It is a male dominated sport. So there were a lot of men in there. And I was afraid of that in the beginning. And the instructor was just saying that's why he gives women a discount, because a lot of women come in there afraid of different things. Like I was afraid, like, what if guys are creepy, like that type of stuff. I didn't get any of those vibes. Like all the men were total gentlemen, totally polite. And I was a mess, by the way. Like I feel like if these men were not polite, it would have been a disaster. Like my like tits were they give you a uniform to wear for this sport. I don't remember what the exact uniform is called. If someone could drop that in the comment section, but maybe I'll remember it next time. But there's a specific uniform that you wear in the sport. Because it was a free trial class, I don't own one, so he gave me one to wear. It was oversized on me, and like it kept falling off on me, and my tits were falling out. I mean, it was crazy. Like it was like, wow, this is going really great as a female. Like my first day in a combat sport. I mean, like I got my period in the class. I mean, it was crazy. No one noticed it, but like I could feel it coming on. It was wild. But clearly having this feminine energy, not knowing what I was doing, I thought I was going to get creeped on, and I did not get that at all. All I got was like kindness, politeness, gentlemen, really supportive men. And there actually are also women in the program too. Not as many as the men, but the instructor was explaining to me that the women have a really tight like bond in there, and that they like arrange parties together to hang out and stuff like that. So that was another thing that really excited me, was that I could meet a community of women that I vibe with. So I'm really excited. I highly recommend trying Jiu-Jitsu out as a female if you have never tried it before. It could be a little bit intimidating at first, but I plan on continuing. I'm going to sign up the first week of February and continue. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about on this episode, if you're somebody who's easily grossed out by body fluid type stuff, I don't recommend you listen to this portion of the episode. But if you're somebody who is interested in the human body and you're not grossed out by that sort of thing, I recommend you stick around for this. So the next section is going to be about IBS. Before I get into this section, I just want to say I'm not a doctor. I'm just sharing my experience of what I've been learning. So don't rely on me for like medical information. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a crazy obsessed person who does a lot of research, and I want to share my experience and what I've learned with you. But if you're having any health issues, make sure you have a medical professional to help you with those. So for those who don't know what IBS is, it's called irritable bowel syndrome. I'm sure you can, again, if you're grossed out by this stuff, don't listen. But for those who are interested in this, I'm sure you can imagine the kind of issues that somebody with irritable bowel syndrome could have. But indigestion, constipation, diarrhea. For somebody to be diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome, they would have to have these issues chronically for several weeks, several months in order to be diagnosed with something like this. It's normal to have a bad day. It's normal to have a stomach ache here and there if you eat too much food or something like that. That's pretty normal for everybody. But for people with IBS, they have these issues chronically. They can't solve the problem. They can't figure it out. Their gut is all messed up and they don't know how to fix it. There could also be a lot of different issues that could cause that as well. IBS is a common one, but there's also specific things that, again, if you are having issues in this area, you do want to see a medical professional or get a colonoscopy, because there's other things that could be happening. There could be colon cancer. There could actually be a dysfunction of certain organs in your body that could actually cause IBS symptoms. Like you could have liver issues or kidney issues, gallstones. Like there's so many things that could be going on. So again, if you suffer with any of these types of issues, you definitely want to get checked by a doctor to rule out all possibilities. But if you're somebody who doesn't have anything more serious going on, or if you're just having these issues and you're waiting for a doctor's appointment and you want to do something to mitigate those symptoms while you're waiting for your doctor's appointment, this is for you. So just to explain what's been going on with me, I have always struggled with digestive issues. And I think a lot of it, now that I reflect back on my history, I think a lot of it was that I just wasn't taking care of myself as much as I thought I was. I've always prided myself on being healthy in the sense that I do work out regularly. I have for a long time. I am very good with eating fresh quality ingredients. That's something like I'm a killer at. Like I'm an ingredient snob. Like I'm really careful about what sort of ingredients I have in my food. But that doesn't necessarily, and by the way, before I get into the next part, what I mean by that is I'm really good at like making sure I get whole food ingredients. Like if I'm going to eat ice cream, I don't eat the one with the fructose. I eat the one with the natural sugar. If I'm going to have pizza, I don't eat frozen pizza or Pizza Hut. I make sure it's like fresh baked pizza, that sort of stuff. I've always been great with that. Embarrassed to say I haven't always been great with other things as far as portioning my food, overconsumption of coffee, that sort of thing. So while I'm a health nerd and a health nut, there had been a lot of things in the past that I was doing that I think were damaging my system. One was drinking coffee on an empty stomach first thing in the morning. No water in my system, no food in my system, just first thing in the morning coffee, and lots of coffee, by the way, not just one cup, like sometimes a half a pot, even more of coffee per day, empty stomach, no water, nothing. So that was something really damaging I was doing to my system. Another thing I was doing to my system was not hydrating. So again, I would start my day off with an enormous amount of coffee, and then to follow up, I wouldn't hydrate. Dairy, I'm super addicted to dairy. So, I mean, I could eat like an entire block of cheese in one sitting, which is an embarrassing thing to say. And again, I was always mindful of picking the healthiest cheese at the grocery store, but even with that, it's not healthy to eat a block of cheese. I mean, that's going to cause constipation. There's no, that's just obvious. Some other bad habits I've had, just portions. I eat huge portions at once and I can't stop myself. I definitely have some type of like addiction issue with food now that I think about it. Because again, the coffee, I need to drink coffee constantly. The portions, like the blocks of cheese at a time. There were just so many things I was doing to my body over the years that's like, well, duh, you're going to have issues. But back to where I'm at now with it. in the past, I would sort of have flare-ups and then they would resolve. So while it was a problem, it was never really much of a problem that it would scare me in a sense. It was kind of just like, well, yeah, I'm mistreating my body with these things. Duh, I'm having issues. Let me just like fix it this week. And then I would kind of like go up and down with my habits there. But never scared me, never made me nervous or anything like that. It wasn't until really the past couple months that I genuinely started to feel nervous about my digestive system and what's been going on, because I started to notice different symptoms that I had never experienced before. And quite honestly, it really scared me. Like I'm not the hypochondriac type at all. Like I said, I had these issues before and I just kind of like brushed it off. But some of the symptoms I had recently, I was like, okay, something really wrong. There's something really wrong with my digestive system. Again, I don't want to give TMI to people, so if you're grossed out, don't listen to this. But if you're here because you want to learn more about this, I will share some of those symptoms with you. Again, constipation and diarrhea, like back and forth different days of the week. Like I would have chronically, like keep in mind in the past, I would have these problems like once a week, but on a consistent basis once a week, but I would have normal days. I'm talking like I've been having these types of issues for the past like 3 months at the least. And so I knew something was wrong, like really, really wrong, but I still was kind of addicted to my habits with coffee and with cheese and whatnot, that I wasn't really willing to admit something was wrong quite yet. And that's where things started turning the past month or the past few weeks even, where I was like, my body is telling me I need to change this or this could get really ugly. And quite honestly, like I said, really scared me. The first thing I noticed was that I would start feeling nausea by looking at certain foods, which is something that I've never experienced in my entire life. Like I said, I'm like an addictive eater. I love food. I could eat large quantities. So this is weird for me, but I mean, to the point where I actually thought I was pregnant, and I'm not pregnant because like it's not, I've been out of a relationship for 2 months and I've had my cycle several times already. So it's not even possible for me to be pregnant. But what I'm saying is like, there was like some type of intuition around food that reminded me of something you would hear about a pregnant woman. Like they start craving certain things or whatever, or like being grossed out by certain things. I started looking at certain foods and feeling like intuitively like I would vomit if I ate them before I even ate them. And they were foods that I would normally love. Tomato sauce, I would see tomato sauce and just the sight of tomato sauce would give me nausea. So there was something my body was trying to tell me by that. Weirdly enough, avocados, recently I started feeling nauseous looking at avocados. So that I don't get, because avocados are supposed to be like a superfood. So I think my body was trying to tell me something like, I know avocados are high in fat, so maybe my body was like intuitively trying to tell me that I'm not processing fats correctly because of my digestive tract, that I need to maybe like calm down on the fats for a little bit. But again, really bizarre, because avocados are something that I love. I love avocados. So for me to feel like repulsed at the sight of them is bizarre. That's when I knew something was really wrong. And there was other foods like just cheese. And again, like going back to what I was saying before, I have a habit of eating blocks of cheese and I love it. I'm addicted to it. But all of a sudden I would look at specifically certain kinds of cheeses, sliced cheeses, which are probably more processed, but like slices of Swiss cheese, slices of cheddar cheese, I would look at it and I would almost feel like I was going to vomit just staring at the food. So that was the first symptom I noticed, was where things really started to get worse, besides the chronic IBS issues of not being regular for a while, were just weird intuitions about food. And then this is, again, like if you're grossed out, don't listen to this, fast forward. But this is where really I started getting scared, was food started to come out of my body completely undigested. And I know that's normal from time to time, where like, you know, you could look down after going to the bathroom and see like chunks of food. But I mean, like on a pretty regular basis, some foods were coming out of me that looked like they weren't eaten at all. They were like food in their raw form. So this really started freaking me out. I was like, all right, I've done some sort of damage to my system. Like something's really wrong here. And the scary thing is like, to see a specialist, a GI doctor, I made an appointment and it takes 3 to 4 months to even see a specialist. So that's really scary too, is like, what if there was something like, what if I had colon cancer or something right now? I wouldn't know for another 3 months. And that's terrifying. I mean, I suppose you could always go to the hospital if things get really serious, but yeah, I told one of my friends about that. I was like, yeah, I made an appointment with a GI doctor and literally it's going to take me 4 months to even get my first appointment. And she's like, yeah, she's like, that's the world we live in today. And it's really sad and it's really scary. So once I realized that, okay, there's something serious going wrong with me and I'm not going to be able to get professional help for a while, I'm going to have to figure out how to manage these symptoms on my own for a while. And that's why I'm creating this video and sharing this in case there's anybody out there who's having the same issue. So I started doing a lot of research. And I also, before I get into some of the research I found, I do want to say this. A lot of people will criticize YouTubers for talking about this stuff. And they'll say like, you're not a doctor, or you need to talk to a doctor, or like, first of all, I can't get a doctor, like I just said. But second of all, there actually is an incredible amount of information out there now that is credible. Incredible amount of credible. There are doctors who have YouTube channels now. Credible sources. There are scientific articles. So yes, we live in the information era, and it's a blessing and a curse. The curse is that you can get bullshit information, but the blessing is you can actually get doctors that if you had to actually see them in person would cost you a lot of money. It would be like a year waiting list. And now you can actually get that information directly from those doctors from their YouTube channel. So I actually think that that's not entirely true. If you know what you're doing and you research the correct sources, you will get good information. So again, I'm not a doctor, but I'm going to give you secondhand information from trusted sources that I looked up. So I don't recommend you take my words as like your prescription, but I do recommend you consider some of the things I'm talking about and then do your own research furthermore with credible sources before you listen to any of my ideas. I'm just throwing the ideas out there, but then follow up with your own research with credible sources. But anyways, as I've been figuring out how to manage these issues by myself while I'm waiting for professional help, I've been looking up, good doctors. Andrew Huberman is a great one. There's a woman called Mel Robbins. She's not a doctor herself. She's a podcaster, like an inspirational speaker, but she had just recently interviewed a doctor who did a whole series on gut health. So that was a really good source for me because that doctor was qualified to talk about it. And I learned a lot about health, and I've just been reading a lot of scientific journals and whatnot, scientific articles online. And what I'm learning is that there's a couple remedies that you could use to deal with this type of situation. And I've been sort of playing around with a combination of both. One is fermented foods, because long story short, I don't want to get into the science of it because I can't explain it as gracefully as some of those doctors that I had mentioned. But there's a lot of research out there about the gut microbiome and the connection between the brain and the gut and how much they're so intertwined, and how your gut health is such an important foundation of your overall health and your overall well-being. That's why I said in the beginning, like, I know this stuff is gross to talk about, but it's important as an adult to not be grossed out by this type of stuff, because your bathroom habits are a sign of health. Like, so if you're going to the bathroom regularly and it's a healthy way, you know what I mean? Like, everything looks good, everything comes out good, everything comes out clean, like it's not messy. You shouldn't be afraid to like think about that type of stuff or grossed out to think about that type of stuff, because that's actually a major indication of good health. So that's why I think this stuff is so important if you're having these type of issues to get into. But anyways, there's just so much information out there about the connection between the brain and the gut and your gut health and your gut microbiome. That's a lot of the research I've been doing. So I highly recommend you do some of your own research there. But I'm going to share with you the two methods I've been trying out to help me. One is implementing fermented foods. Fermented foods are known to help people with these issues reset their gut microbiome. You can have fermented foods in different forms. Sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha is another one. There's a lot of different, I think probiotic yogurts are technically fermented. So Greek yogurt without any added sugars or anything like that. Kefir, stuff like that. So again, the reason why I'm bringing up the two different methods is because you need to know your own body and figure out how your own body works, because for one person, fermented foods might be the cure, but for another person who has specific food allergies, fermented foods might actually make things way worse. So the other thing I've been playing around with is called the FODMAP diet, FODMAP, low fat FODMAP diet. Basically, each letter of that stands for a chemical compound in a food. I'm not going to break down each individual chemical compound because I don't feel qualified to do so. So again, do your research if you want to know what each one of those letters stands for, FODMAP, figure that out. But it's basically, the diet puts you on foods that are easier to digest as a way to, it's an elimination diet where you're only eating these foods that are known to be easier and to cause less inflammation on the digestive system. And then the idea isn't necessarily to have a restrictive diet for the rest of your life, but the idea is to then later on, after a month or two of being on this diet, to then slowly introduce one food at a time to figure out what the culprit is. So maybe one of these days I'll do what I eat in a day on this diet video so you can actually see my planned meals, but I'm just going to verbally talk about what some of these foods are. Interestingly enough, avocados were one of the things I had to cut out. So I thought that was interesting that my body was telling me naturally not to eat avocados, which is so healthy for you. But the FODMAP diet actually wants you to cut out avocados from the diet. So what I like about this diet so far is that it's not very restrictive in terms of food groups. You can eat pretty much any food group. Even there are some dairies that are tolerable on the food group. I believe butter is okay on this list, or any cheeses that are known to have low lactose, because I don't think it's dairy that they're getting rid of on this diet. It's just dairy that's known to be high in lactose. There are some dairies out there that have very low lactose. There are some dairies out there that actually do have very low lactose, and I believe Parmesan might be one of those. I think hard cheeses tend to be a little more lower on lactose content. So anyways, there's minimal dairy you can have on it. You can have carbs, you can have fats, you can have proteins, you can have literally every food group, but you just have to be really, really careful about which ones you're consuming. So I'll just walk you through what I had today, for example. First thing I had in the morning when I woke up was rice cakes. I had just plain brown rice cakes. There's no oil or anything in it. They're organic rice cakes with just brown rice and a little salt. And then I had sliced bananas on top of that. Totally approved on this diet. Later for lunch, I had buckwheat. You can have buckwheat on this diet. Certain wheats and carbs you can have on it. But I made buckwheat and I put ground turkey, lean turkey, because they recommend you have meats that are more lean and lower in fat on this diet. And I put some vegetables on top of it, but ones that are easier on the digestive system. Spinach is one of them. You can have most leafy greens. Apparently cooked vegetables are easier to digest. So that's what I had for lunch. I had the buckwheat, a little bit of spinach on it, and the ground turkey, just a small portion of the turkey. And then later for dinner, I didn't eat my dinner yet today, but I'm going to have some lean steak, like some sirloin, like low fat steak. And I might have some sweet potato on the side, and then again, some type of green vegetable. So it's a very healthy diet in terms of your digestion. You're eating things that are very easy to digest. Again, the idea isn't that you're going to be stuck on this diet for the rest of your life. The idea is to reset your gut so that you can figure out what's wrong, and then you can slowly introduce the other foods back, because everybody's different. Everybody's body is completely different. You might find later that you introduced the dairy and that you didn't have a problem with it at all. You might find that you introduce the dairy and you can tolerate a little bit of dairy, or certain dairies. You might find that, hey, I can tolerate this hard cheese, but I can't tolerate the mozzarella cheese. Like, everybody's body's so different. Again, with the meats, you might introduce high fat meats and you might find, this is interesting. I can eat chicken with like skin on it, but I can't have burger meat. So it's really more like figuring out your own body and an elimination process for your body. So you're starting from a really healthy ground. And again, you have to be careful, because this is self-experimentation. So that the FODMAP diet might not even be a solution for people who have even further allergies. Because like if there's something serious going on, really serious, you might have trouble breaking down all fats. Like, so you might not be able to eat fat at all. Like there's so many things that could go on. So again, remember that this really, I'm not saying to do this from a place of like, I'm a doctor prescribing you. I'm saying do this from a place of, if you're in a situation like me, where you're stuck in a situation where you can't get help from a professional for 4 months and you have to mitigate things on your own. So that's where I'm at with it. And, you know, I recommend trying this out if you're in a situation like that. But again, listening to your body, because everybody's body's so completely different. You know, what's an irritant for one person might not cause inflammation for the other person. So one thing I will say for me is that I was doing so many damaging things to my body that I have no idea what's causing all this inflammation in my gut. So when I do come back and reintroduce some of these habits to figure out what the problem is, for me, the potential problem is 1, drinking too much coffee on an empty stomach and drinking just too much coffee, period. 2, antidepressants. I'm actually wondering if some of my symptoms are being caused as a side effect of my antidepressants. I'm not going off my antidepressants. I've tried that in the past and it was a disaster. I do need them, but I'm actually going to go on a lower dose. I have been fine on a lower dose before, so I'm in a good place mentally right now. So I'm actually going to lower the dose of my medication to see if that helps the symptoms. Dairy, it could be dairy that's bothering me. It could be gluten that's bothering me. I'm not having gluten right now on this FODMAP diet, by the way. I think you don't have to cut out gluten in the low FODMAP diet, but to me it makes sense to try it because gluten is a known irritant for people and known to cause inflammation. So to me it makes perfect sense to like test it out and see if gluten is one of the things that is bothering you. What else? It could be the gluten, it could be the dairy, added sugars. It could be that, because I have been more comfortable eating like donuts and that type of thing lately. So I could find out later that I'm okay with gluten, but I'm just not okay with it when you have all that added sugar. Honey, I've been eating a lot of honey lately, and that could be an irritant because it's high in sugar. It's natural sugar, and I've always been good about that, but it's still high in sugar, period. And maybe I just can't tolerate it. I don't know what the problem is, but I'm in a trial process of figuring that out. And I'm using a combination of the FODMAP diet and fermented foods. That might not work for everybody because fermented foods could actually be an irritant for some people, but I'm trying out both. I do want to give my feedback so far about how this diet has been working for me. The low FODMAP diet paired with low doses of fermented foods. It's too soon to really tell how this is going to help me in the long run. And I'm still waiting for my doctor's appointment to rule out any other serious complications like colon cancer or whatnot. But I do want to say in the 4 days now that I've tried it, I have noticed an enormous improvement, like insane. So I will say that it is working so far. It's too soon to tell. I don't want to like jinx myself and be like, man, I had a lucky day, but I go back to other ways. So I don't want to jinx myself too soon, but the first day or two, I didn't feel much of an improvement, which was really discouraging. But then I did some further research and I found out that digestion can actually take 72 hours to process for some people. So even though I was eating all these like easily digestible foods now, your body could still be working out foods from like 2 days ago. So if you are going to try this diet, give it a few days because your body could still be working out foods that were causing you inflammation. So first 2 days, I didn't feel much of a difference. By the third day, I felt an enormous difference, which was really encouraging and really inspiring to see. Also, to add on to that, I want to say this too. I was really bummed out at first when I found out I had to try this diet out because I had a bad history of issues with eating where I had an eating disorder and I was afraid to eat certain foods, and I was eating mostly healthy foods at one point in my time, but not out of a desire to be healthy, out of a desire to be thin. So it took me years to recover out of that mindset. And I feel like I finally got to a place where I can eat whatever I want guilt-free and not feel anything. And it took me so long to get here. And I'm like, I was so excited. I was like, I can have a donut. I can have a slice of pizza. and all that, and enjoy it and just enjoy life and be happy with that. I finally got there, and now my body's like, no, you can't do that. So I'm really pissed off and quite honestly devastated about that. But at the same time, I'm also like hopeful and inspired because now I'm being forced to eat healthy, not out of like anxiety or fear of gaining weight, but I'm being forced to eat for my health out of necessity. So being forced to eat healthy out of necessity to improve my stomach issues. So in one sense, I'm kind of pissed off and like sad that I don't get to enjoy all the foods that I thought I would. But on the other hand, I'm also inspired because it's like, maybe this is like a blessing in disguise of some kind where I'm actually at a healthy place mentally with food, where eating healthy isn't eating disorderly. It's actually for my genuine health. So maybe at the end of this, I'm going to resolve a lot of problems that I have otherwise, like, you know, body tensions and mental issues. Like maybe if I reset my gut, because again, we were talking about how the gut and the brain is so connected, maybe this will actually help my mind tremendously. So while I'm really bummed out in the moment, I'm also thinking that this could be some sort of blessing in disguise. And it's too soon to tell. I need to get a professional to look at me and rule out any other possibilities. And I need to be on the diet for longer than a week to really say if this is going to work long term. But again, first 2 days didn't feel much of a difference at all. Third day, I felt incredible. Like everything functioned well in the bathroom, which was incredibly like inspiring. Like it makes me feel like, okay, maybe I don't have some sort of serious condition. Maybe this is solvable. And, you know, I'm sure I don't have to cut out junk food for the rest of my life. Like I'm sure I could enjoy a slice of pizza, but maybe I'll have to do it in more moderation and be more mindful to only include smaller portions of those things in my life. I won't know that until again, you're supposed to experiment with the FODMAP diet for like a month or two. Like they say 4 to 6 weeks. So I just say a month or two. So I think you need to be on the diet for a month or two and then go through the elimination process and the reintroduction process to really figure out what is causing the issues. And by then everybody's different. Like some people will be able to add in and tolerate more than other people. So we'll get there when we get there. But in the meantime, I'm really excited to embark this journey of like getting to the root cause of my stomach issues that quite frankly, I should have been working on this a long time ago, but I let it get to a point where it's gotten this severe where it's like I'm being like pushed in a corner and forced to fix it. Like I said, my body was doing weird things, like just feeling grossed out and repulsed by the sight of certain foods. So definitely something intuitive was going on where it was like, you better fix this or you're going to cause a much bigger issue that could kill you. Like that's kind of what my body was telling me, you know? So, you know, scary stuff, but also inspiring stuff because it is forcing me to problem solve. Like it's kind of the theme of this episode when we go back to the Jiu Jitsu stuff and problem solve. It's forcing me to think about long-term sustainability of diet and not like short-term solutions. So inspiring, nerve-wracking, but also very inspiring at the same time for me to do this. But anyways, that's it. That's the Pranzata Podcast, episode 108. Again, if you enjoyed what you heard today, it is my mission to grow this channel. I would like to get it monetized, and not from a place of greed, but because I really love this. I love doing this podcast. So I would like to reach a point where I can actually do this as a full-time career, get better guests on here, get better equipment, grow a team of assistants and whatnot. So if you liked what you heard today, please don't forget to hit subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And again, Pranzata Podcast, episode 108. Come back next week for a live guest. And that's it. Have a good day. Bye.